Sit back and throw one back with your pinky in the air and a middle finger to the world, and join me, the eclectic gentleman Stephen Watts, as we look back on this day in pro wrestling history. But before we do, put that drink down, like, share, and subscribe, and without further ado, let's get our wrestling history on. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, it is December 25th. Merry Christmas. And we're going to start off as we always do on a positive note. That's right, these are your pro wrestling birthdays. 1935, former Worldwide Wrestling Federation enhancement talent, Woody Farmer. 1941, England's own Dave Morgan. 1973, former TNA Tag Team Champion, one half of America's Most Wanted, Chris Harris. 1985, the Bulgarian Brute, Miro. And last but not least, 1987, the luchador known as Astro. Of course, on the flip side of that coin, your pro wrestling deaths for December 25th. 1991, former football player and wrestler, Wilbur Snyder. Alright, enough of the sad stuff. It's time to get to the meat and potatoes. That's right, these are your pro wrestling history highlights for December 25th. Jumping in the Wayback Machine and going all the way to 1902, where we see Don McLeod defeat Tom Jenkins to win the American Heavyweight title for a second time. The match was actually stopped and Jenkins forfeited the title to McLeod due to problems with his leg, later diagnosed as blood poisoning. Leaping 38 years to 1940, Billy McEwen defeats Billy Rayborn in Eugene, Oregon to become the first Pacific Coast Junior Heavyweight Champion. Grooving into 1965, in Indianapolis, Indiana, Dick the Bruiser defeats Gene Knitsky for the World Wrestling Association World Heavyweight title, beginning his third reign. Also, Moose Chulak and Wilbur Snyder defeat the Assassins Guy Mitchell and Joe Tommaso to win the WWA World Tag Team titles. 2 years later, in 1967, Art Nielsen and Pat Patterson defeat Red Bastion and Mario Milano for the International Wrestling Alliance Australian Tag Team titles in San Francisco, California, ending Bastion and Milano's third reign. Making 4 stops in the year 1968. First, Turo Tanaka defeats Jim Hattie to win the NWA Hawaiian North American Heavyweight title in Honolulu, Hawaii. Also, Nick Bockwinkel defeats Johnny Barend for the NWA Hawaii Heavyweight title. Our second stop in 68 sees Ray Mendoza defeat Angel Blanco in Mexico City, Mexico to win the NWA World Light Heavyweight title for a third time. The third stop in 1968, Alberto and Ramon Torres defeat Butcher and Stan Vachon to win the NWA Georgia Tag Team titles in Savannah, Georgia. This ended the Vachon's second reign and began the Torres' third. Our fourth and final stop in 68 and in the 60s, Carl and Kurt Von Steiger defeat Johnny War Eagle and Billy White Wolf to win the NWA Pacific Northwest Tag Team titles, beginning their second reign. Grabbing my bell bottoms and disco ducking it to the year 1970. Jose Lothario and Danny Miller defeat the Infernos to become the new NWA Florida Tag Team Champions in Tampa, Florida. The previous champions, Dusty Rhodes and Dick Murdoch, had been stripped of the belts. 5 years later, in 1975, Dutch Savage and Jimmy Snuka win their third NWA Pacific Northwest Tag Team titles, ending the fifth reign of the Royal Kangaroos, Jonathan Boyd and Norman Frederick Charles. Making 2 stops in 1977. First, Bobby Sweetin defeats Black Angus Campbell for the NWA Central States television title in Kansas City, Kansas, beginning his second reign. Our second stop in 1977 sees Gypsy Joe and Leroy Rochester, aka the Junkyard Dog, win a tournament final in Nashville, Tennessee for the vacant NWA Mid-American Tag Team titles. Making 3 stops in 1978, first, Kevin Von Erich defeats Bruiser Brody in Fort Worth, Texas to win the NWA American Heavyweight title, ending Brody's third reign. Our second stop in 78, Austin Idol ends Jerry Lawler's 14th reign of 5,675 as AWA Southern Heavyweight Champion in Memphis, Tennessee. Our third and final stop in 78, Bill Watts' Mid-South Wrestling held a Superdome extravaganza in New Orleans, Louisiana at the Superdome, headlined by a tournament for the United States Tag Team titles. In that tournament final, Andre the Giant and Dusty Rhodes defeat Ernie Ladd and Stan Hansen to win the tournament and the U.S. Tag Team titles. Danny Hodge was the special referee. Another 3 stops, but this time in 1979. First, Jack and Jerry Briscoe defeat Austin Idol and the Masked Superstar to win the NWA Georgia Tag Team titles. Second, Bob Armstrong defeats Sterling Golden, aka Hulk Hogan, for the NWA Southeastern Heavyweight title in Knoxville, Tennessee. And our third and final stop in 79, Jim Brunzell wins his second NWA Mid-Atlantic Heavyweight title in Charlotte, North Carolina, by defeating Ray Stevens. Grabbing my boombox and going to the 80s, 1981. At World Class Championship Wrestling's Christmas Star Wars in Dallas, Texas, Jose Lothario defeats Ernie Ladd in Dallas, Texas, to win the NWA Texas Brass Knuckles title. Also, Tiny Tom defeats Little Tokyo to win the NWA World Midgets title, ending Tokyo's second reign. Making another 2 stops, but this time in 1982. First, Mike Rotundo defeats Bad Leroy Brown in Charlotte, North Carolina to win the NWA Mid-Atlantic television title. Our second stop in 1982, World Class Championship Wrestling holds the first Christmas Star Wars event at the Reunion Arena in Dallas, Texas, drawing a crowd of over 18,000 fans, a Texas record gate at the time. A show that featured one of the most famous heel turns of all time, a turn that sparked arguably the greatest feud in Texas wrestling history, the Von Erichs versus the Fabulous Freebirds. The main event sees NWA World Heavyweight Champion Ric Flair defeat Kerry Von Erich in a no disqualification steel cage match, in which Michael Hayes was the special referee. Leading up to the match, World Class had run a storyline where, due to past controversial decisions in Flair title matches, there was a dispute as to who the referee would be. It was decided that Hayes, rather than the usual officials, David Manning and Bronco Lubbock, would be a tough but fair and able to keep control of the match. During the match, Von Erich and Flair got knocked out, and Hayes dragged Kerry on top of Flair and counted the 3. However, Von Erich refused to accept the victory and gave the match to Flair. Hayes screamed at Von Erich, calling him an idiot, and Kerry exited the cage. Terry Gordy slammed the door on Von Erich's head, sparking off the Freebirds' heel turn and beginning the legendary feud with the Von Erichs. 3 stops this time, but in 1983. First, Rip Oliver defeats Billy Jack Haynes to win the NWA Pacific Northwest Heavyweight title in Seattle, Washington, beginning his 5th reign and ending Billy Jack's 2nd. Second stop in 83, Magnum TA and Mr. Wrestling 2 defeat Butch Reed and Jim Neidhart to win the Mid-South Wrestling Association Tag Team titles in New Orleans, Louisiana. Third and final stop in 83, World Class Championship Wrestling held their Christmas Star Wars event at the Reunion Arena in Dallas, Texas, drawing over 19,000 fans this year. In a main event, Jimmy Garvin defeated Chris Adams to win the World Class American title. Making 2 stops in 84, first, the Rock and Roll Express defeat Ted DiBiase and Hercules Hernandez to win the Mid-South Wrestling Association Tag Team titles in New Orleans, Louisiana. Our second stop in 84, World Class Championship Wrestling holds their Christmas Star Wars event once again at the Reunion Arena in Dallas, Texas, drawing over 17,000 fans. The main event sees Kerry Von Erich defeat NWA Heavyweight Champion Ric Flair via DQ. 1985, World Class Championship Wrestling is at it again with Christmas Star Wars at the Reunion Arena in Dallas, Texas, this time drawing only 8,000 fans. The main event sees Kerry, Kevin, and Lance Von Erich defeat the Fabulous Freebirds, Michael Hayes, Terry Gordy, and Buddy Roberts. Making 4 stops in 1986. First, the AWA holds Brawl in St. Paul at the St. Paul Civic Center in St. Paul, Minnesota, drawing over 8,000 fans. With a main event of AWA World Heavyweight Champion Nick Bockwinkel defeating Kurt Hennig via disqualification, and the Midnight Rockers, Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty, defeating Buddy Rose and Doug Summers in a steel cage match. Second stop at 86, and World Class is at it again with their Christmas Star Wars event at the Reunion Arena in Dallas, Texas, drawing over 7,000 fans. The main event sees Abdul the Butcher defeat Bruiser Brody in a loser leaves town steel cage match. Third stop in 1986, the New Breed, Chris Champion and Sean Royal, defeat Vic Steamboat and Kendall Windham in Tampa, Florida to win the vacant NWA Florida Tag Team titles. The titles had been inactive for 5 years prior to this. Our fourth and final stop in 86, the Nightmares, Danny Davis and Ken Wayne, defeat Tony Anthony and Jerry Stubbs for the Continental Wrestling Federation Tag Team titles in Birmingham, Alabama. 3 Christmas stops in 87. First, World Class Championship Wrestling is at it once again for Christmas Star Wars at the Reunion Arena, drawing only over 4,000 fans. The main event sees World Class Champion Al Perez defeat Kerry Von Erich in a steel cage match. Prior to the match, Fritz Von Erich was attacked by a group of heels and faked a heart attack in the ring. Legitimate news media fell for the act and reported on his heart attack as being for real. For the next several weeks, Fritz's condition would get better or worse depending on how well the shows were drawing, as his sons promised to get revenge for what happened to their father. Only in the wrestling business, folks. Second stop in 1987, Lord Humongous, aka Sid Vicious, defeats Danny Davis for the NWA Southeastern Heavyweight title in Knoxville, Tennessee. Our third and final stop in 87, Dave Patterson ends the 18th NWA Central States Heavyweight title reign of Bob Brown in St. Joseph, Missouri. That next year in 1988, Mike Graham defeats the Terminator to win the vacant NWA Florida Heavyweight title in Tampa, Florida. The title had been vacated when champion Mike Rotunda gave the belt to Rick Steiner. Grabbing my flannel and going to the decade of grunge, 1991. Jushin Thunder Liger defeats Brian Pillman to win the WCW Light Heavyweight title in Atlanta, Georgia. 2 years later in 1993, Black Bart and John Hawk, aka JBL, defeat Steve Dane and Chaz Taylor for the Global Wrestling Federation Tag Team titles in Dallas, Texas. At the same event, Chris Adams wins the GWF North American Heavyweight title from Iceman King Parsons. Those were your short but sweet pro wrestling history highlights for December 25th. I'm the Eclectic Gentleman Stephen Watts, and Merry Christmas.